Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks. In this channel, we generally discuss about public cloud design problem statements and their related solution. Today, we are going to discuss about cache-aside pattern. So the problem statement, how to implement high performance caching system while maintaining consistency between cache and data store. We will deep dive into the problem statement in the successive slide. But before that, let's try to understand what is caching. When you have an application which is interacting with a database, in that case, whenever a request is coming, each time you are retrieving it from the database. When the same request is coming again you are going to the database and retrieving the value. But when you are having cache which has been implemented in your solution, in that case, when the first request is coming, you are getting the data from the database, and after that you are storing into the cache. And when the same request is coming again, you will get the data from the cache and you do not have to go to the database. In this way, the performance of the application will increase because you do not have to do any database interaction or database transaction, or the same query needs to be executed. Let you have a long query which is getting executed in database, the same need not to be executed here. That's how cache will help you to increase the performance of your application. So that is the basic concept behind the caching. Now let's try to understand the problem statement. So you have a app service which is interacting to the SQL database, and when you are querying the SQL database, after that what your SQL database is having one table which has two columns, one employee ID and second is salary. When the first request is coming to retrieve the salary of employee ID 123, that time you are storing the data in the cache. But at the same time, the database is getting updated by some third party system or by your data factory or some other process. For 123 employee ID has been updated with 45,000 as salary, but when the same request is coming to your app service, it has not yet been updated in your cache. And when it is querying for 123, it will show you 25,000 as the salary. By the reason, this is the inconsistency which is getting observed between your cache and your database. So to solve this, we generally use cache-aside pattern. We will deep dive into it in detail. But before that, let's try to understand types of caching operation. One is read through, write through, write behind. So what is read through caching? When you are talking about read through caching, that means when a request is coming to your application, first it will check in the cache. If the cache is not having the data, then it will retrieve it from the database, and then after that it will store in the cache, and then it will return back to the application. And if the same request is coming again, then it will retrieve it from the cache. It will not go to the database interaction. This is a simple read through activities. That means you are just reading it through from the cache. Second, write through caching. When you are having a write operation, in that case, first it will check in the cache and it will go to the database. It will do the write operation. After that, it will do the write operation inside the cache, and then it will coming back to the application. Now this is what write through caching. Now the write behind caching. So when a request is coming, first it will go to the cache, it will write it in the cache, then after that asynchronously it will update the data in the database. But the biggest demerit here is if you have a single cluster node and you are storing the data in the cache, and by the time you have to write it into the database, the cache is getting deleted or somehow the cluster is getting demolished. In that case, the data is lost. So this is a very peculiar scenario. When you are designing such scenario, be very careful how to design it efficiently. Now, what is how to solve the cache-aside pattern? So when you are having an application and you are interacting with the database, and in that case, you are storing the data into the cache, and if there is a change in the database, let the employee ID has been updated 123, the salary has been updated from 25,000 to 45,000. In that case, the first and foremost thing is to invalidate the cache. That means you will delete the entry from the cache for the employee ID 123, so that when the next request is coming, it will not find the data in the cache. It will go to the database, and then the first and foremost thing is it will store it again to the cache, then so that it will be always having a updated data. So the key behind the cache-aside pattern is invalidate the cache when there is a change in your data store. So this is what the cache-aside pattern is providing you as a solution. Now, when not to use cache-aside pattern? So when you are having a static data, that means it is not getting changed, then never use cache-aside pattern. Try to avoid client server affinity so that you do not need to use the cache-aside pattern. When to use it? When resource demand is unpredictable, that means when there is a change in your database is unpredictable, at any time the change can happen. In that case, it is wise to use the cache aside pattern, so that in case of any change, it will immediately invalidate the cache. Now, points to consider: lifetime of the cache data. So when you are talking about lifetime of the caching data, that means the caching system has come generally provides the policy which will change the which will set the life cycle or lifetime of that particular cache inside the data inside the cache. Second, evicting the data. Evicting the data means when you are having a database or data store which is having a huge number of data, and in that case when you are storing it to the cache, if you store all the data or you store more and more data, in that case the cache will much more costly. In that case, to avoid that, you need to evict the data inside the cache so that it will also be very effective. Priming the cache, that means during the startup time of your application, if you refresh the cache, that will also help you out to refresh your data. Consistency, you always need to invalidate the cache when there is a change in the data store, so that your data in the cache will be always consistent. In-memory caching is something when you are having the application inside, and inside the application you are having the in-memory and in-memory cache, and in that case your application will be always up to date, because it stores the data inside the cache, and also the cache is getting updated when there is a interaction with the database, so that whenever a call is going to the database or data store, it will update the in-memory cache as well. So these are all points you need to be very careful when you are designing the caching. I have gathered all this information by following this Microsoft link. If you have any comments, please feel free to provide it in the comment section. And yes, happy reading. Thank you.